The last thing you'd expect at a quiet Sunday potluck is for someone to get tackled into the grass like it's the Super Bowl halftime show. But that's exactly what happened when Helen Delacroix, the reigning queen of our homeowners association, grabbed a pregnant woman by the hair and yanked her straight off a picnic bench. My wife, Clara, who was 7 months pregnant with our daughter, landed hard on her side as her salad plate flew across the lawn. Helen stood over her screaming about unauthorized ground cover, while still clutching her hair. That's when my brother Marcus, a retired Army Ranger who just so happened to be visiting, sprinted across the field like a heat-seeking missile and brought Helen to the ground in a clean, professional takedown that made half the crowd cheer and the other half gasp. What Helen didn't know, what she never seemed to consider, was that rules don't make you right. And sometimes when you push too far, people push back. This is the story of how one woman's obsession with order collided headfirst with a neighborhood that had finally had enough. But before we dive deep into this unbelievable mess of lawn politics, prejudice, and unexpected heroics, take a moment to support the channel. Give us a like if you've ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA, subscribe if you love seeing justice served, and please comment below with where you're watching from. We read every single one and love seeing how far these stories travel. From small towns to big cities, HOA Karens don't stand a chance when we stick together. Let's get into it. 6 months before the picnic incident, Clara and I had moved to Sycamore Glen, a picturesque neighborhood tucked just outside of Edenbrook, Georgia. After scrimping, saving, and postponing more vacations than I care to count, we'd finally bought our first home. To us it was perfect. Tree-lined streets, a small lake at the center, friendly neighbors, and enough quiet to hear birdsong in the morning. Clara, a 5th-grade teacher with more heart than anyone I've ever known, instantly fell in love with the backyard. She saw not just a patch of grass but a blank canvas. Within weeks she'd filled the front garden with lavender, creeping thyme, and clusters of wild blue indigo, her late grandmother's favorite flower. That's when we met Helen. Helen Delacroix was the HOA president of Sycamore Glen. Early 60s, white linen blouses, and a voice that could curdle milk. She ran a boutique pet grooming salon in town and had a reputation for making small dogs look like Paris runway models. She also ran the HOA like it was a branch of federal government. Not a blade of grass was allowed to stray out of line. Our first warning came via a thick envelope taped to our door. Violation number 237. Inconsistent aesthetic elements, unapproved ground flora. There was a grainy photo of our front yard with the blue indigo circled in red marker like it was a crime scene. Clara was confused but hopeful. Maybe it's a mistake, she said. I'll talk to her. Big mistake. Clara visited Helen at her shop, the Velvet Paw, where bichons and tiaras sat on velvet cushions. She explained, gently, politely, that the flowers had cultural significance. That they reminded her of her Appalachian roots. That she was willing to plant complementary flowers to balance the look. Helen nodded with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. We have guidelines for a reason, she said. Sentiment doesn't change standards, dear. If you want blue, hydrangeas are on the approved list. From that day forward, the battle began. More letters followed. Fines were threatened. Clara's flowers started showing up in the monthly HOA newsletter under a column titled, What Not to Do. Neighbors began whispering that Helen was patrolling with a tape measure and clipboard, jotting down infractions, while walking her teacup poodle. Still Clara stayed calm. It's just flowers, she'd tell me, hand on her belly. Not worth raising my blood pressure over. I wanted to rip up every HOA notice and light them on fire. But Clara, ever the diplomat, had a plan. She compiled articles about the wild indigo's significance in southern heritage gardens. She printed out photos of its use in colonial botanical records. She even got a signed letter from a local historian. Her idea was to make a formal presentation at the next HOA meeting and request an exemption. Official, respectful, proper. That meeting was scheduled for the day after Sycamore Glen's annual summer potluck, a neighborhood tradition featuring lemonade, overcooked burgers, and more deviled eggs than any human being should consume in one sitting. Clara made her famous cornbread salad. I manned the grill. And my older brother Marcus, recently retired from the military and visiting for a few days, was there to soak in the peace and help with baby prep. Marcus, at 41, looked like someone the National Guard calls when the apocalypse is a little ahead of schedule. Shaved head, calm eyes, always scanning the perimeter. After 3 deployments and a lifetime of discipline, not much surprised him. HOA drama? He laughed when I told him about Helen. Trust me, man, these people are paper tigers. They bark loud because no one ever barks back. He hadn't met Helen yet. The potluck started smoothly. Marcus chatted with a few retired veterans near the gazebo. Clara and I sat under a tree with some of the teachers from her school. Helen made her rounds like she was hosting the Oscars, clipboard in hand, lips pursed, eyes always scanning. I just gotten up to refill our drinks when it all went sideways. Clara, trying to be civil, smiled as Helen passed by. "This turned out lovely, Mrs. Delacroix," she said. "Looking forward to tomorrow's meeting." Helen stopped. Her smile evaporated. "I see your front yard still hasn't been corrected," she said, tilting her head. "Planning to lecture us about weeds now?" Clara rested her hand on her belly. "I've prepared some material about cultural landscaping, just hoping to share a different perspective." "Perspective doesn't override the bylaws," Helen snapped. "You give people a foot and soon enough there's chickens in the driveway and goats on the porch." A nearby conversation stopped cold. Someone coughed awkwardly. Clara's smile didn't waver. "With respect, our yard isn't hurting anyone. I've tried to follow the process." "That's the problem," Helen said, stepping closer. "People like you always think the rules don't apply. You think your heritage lets you plant whatever you like anywhere you like." "People like me?" Clara asked. "What does that mean?" "You know exactly what it means," Helen hissed. "Next it'll be fire pits, pickup trucks on blocks, and who knows what else. We're not turning Sycamore Glen into backwoods Appalachia." The blood drained from Clara's face. I was already moving toward them, lemonade forgotten. I saw Helen's hand twitch. And then, she grabbed Clara's hair. Clara screamed, not out of pain but pure shock, as Helen yanked her backward off the bench. The paper plate she'd been holding flew into the air, cornbread salad landing in a sad splatter by the lemonade jug. Her chair tipped. Her legs scrambled for footing. She twisted midair, instinctively trying to protect her stomach, but she still hit the ground hard on her left side. People gasped. One woman dropped her Tupperware. Another kid started crying. Helen still had a fistful of Clara's hair, ranting loud enough for the whole park to hear. "This is what happens when you think the rules don't apply to you. I warned you." My legs were already moving. I was maybe 30 feet away. But Marcus? Marcus was on the other side of the park, twice as far, and he moved like something had been set off inside him. He didn't shout. Didn't hesitate. He just ran. By the time I'd closed half the distance, he'd already reached them. It was fast, surgical. 1 second Helen was looming over Clara like a banshee in pearls, and the next, Marcus had wrapped his arm around her waist and taken her down with the grace of someone trained to stop a threat without leaving a bruise. They hit the grass. Gently, considering. Helen shrieked. Her sunglasses went flying. Her hair, always a perfect puff, was full of grass and half-crushed tortilla chips. "What are you doing? Get off me." "This is assault," she yelled, kicking at the air. "Ma'am, you just assaulted a pregnant woman," Marcus said calmly. "You're being restrained for safety until the police arrive." Clara was sobbing now, curled on her side, arms around her belly. "I think she pulled something. I landed hard. I don't know if..." I dropped to my knees beside her. Hey, I'm here. Breathe. "Is the baby moving? Are you okay?" She shook her head, tears everywhere. "He's kicking. I think he's okay. I didn't land on my stomach." One of the teachers she'd been sitting with, Miss Sharon, I think, knelt beside us. "I used to be a nurse," she whispered. "Let's get her to that bench in the shade. Keep her talking. Keep her still." The scene around us exploded. Phones were out. Neighbors whisper shouting. Some filming. Some calling 911. Helen, meanwhile, had lost her mind. "You're all witnesses to this. That man attacked me. He's dangerous. I want him arrested." Marcus didn't budge. "I'm licensed security." She went after a pregnant woman. "I'm protecting a victim." Sirens wailed in the distance. Clara's breathing started to steady, though her hands stayed clamped around her belly like a shield. I helped her onto the bench while Miss Sharon took her pulse and asked about contractions. Across the park, Helen kept thrashing on the grass like a fish on a dock, but no one moved to help her. She looked ridiculous, her white pants smeared green, hair matted, shoes gone. 2 police cruisers pulled into the lot just as someone brought over an umbrella for shade. The first officer out was short, thick, mustached. The second was tall, clean-cut, all business. They took in the scene, one man calmly holding down a shrieking woman, a pregnant woman sobbing on a bench, a dozen cell phones filming, and did what good cops do. Stayed calm. "Sir," the shorter one said, approaching Marcus, "what exactly is going on here?" Marcus let go of Helen slowly, hands visible. "I'm Marcus Nolan. This woman physically assaulted my pregnant sister-in-law, pulled her by the hair and caused her to fall. I restrained her to prevent further harm. There are multiple witnesses and videos. While he spoke, the taller officer headed straight for Clara. Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? I'm okay, I think, Clara said softly. My side hurts. The baby's still moving. Let's get paramedics to check her just to be safe, the officer nodded, then spoke into her radio. The mustached officer turned back to Marcus. Nolan. You wouldn't happen to be Sergeant Marcus Nolan from the 112th Rangers? Marcus blinked. Yes. You served? Corporal Wes Doyle. Afghanistan 2009. You ran our base drill in Kandahar. Saved my hide during a sandstorm. Marcus's face softened for the first time all day. Doyle. Man, I remember you. Card tricks. They shook hands. Just for a second. Then Helen's voice cut in again. Hello? I'm the real victim here. That man threw me to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Ma'am, Officer Doyle said, his friendly tone vanishing, we're sorting this out. Please remain calm. Another neighbor stepped forward, holding her phone up. I've got the whole thing on video. She grabbed Clara out of nowhere. Said something about people like you, and turning the place into a dump. I have a video too, said someone else. It shows the hair pulling. It's bad. The second officer returned from checking on Clara. Pregnant, 3rd trimester. No signs of labor yet. She fell on her side, not her stomach, thank God. But she's clearly traumatized. Medics are on the way. Officer Doyle took one of the phones and hit play. For a full minute, no one spoke. Then he looked at Helen. Ma'am, based on this footage, you're being placed under arrest for assault and battery. The fact that your victim is pregnant elevates the charge. Helen's mouth fell open like someone unplugged her jaw. You can't arrest me. I was enforcing HOA rules. HOA rules don't include physical assault, said the tall officer flatly. She provoked me, with her ethnic plants. She was trying to start something. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Ma'am, Officer Doyle said as he took out his handcuffs, you have the right to remain silent. And you should seriously consider using it. He cuffed her, reading her rights as she screamed about bylaws and aesthetics. The medics arrived moments later, checking Clara's vitals, scanning her belly and helping her onto a stretcher. She seems stable, the lead EMT told me. But a fall like this can cause hidden issues. We recommend taking her in for monitoring. We'll follow you, I said immediately. Marcus, now standing calmly by the squad car, looked over. Want me to come with? Clara, eyes glassy, nodded. Please. He walked beside the stretcher as they wheeled her to the ambulance. His shirt was stained from the grass. His knuckles were scratched. But his voice was steady. No one touches family, he said almost to himself. Not on my watch. The emergency room smelled like antiseptic and fluorescent lights. Clara lay hooked to a monitor that beeped steady and slow, her hand resting on the gentle rise of her belly. Her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, blinking hard. She wasn't crying anymore, but that kind of stillness scared me more. The doctor came in after what felt like hours but was probably 20 minutes. Vitals are good, she said softly. Baby's heart rate is strong. No signs of labor. But given the trauma, we'd like to keep her overnight for observation. Just to be safe. I nodded. Whatever you need. We're not going anywhere. Marcus paced in the corner. He hadn't sat once. I filed my statement with the officers before we left, he said. Plenty of witnesses too. And videos. Thank you, Clara said, her voice thin. Marcus walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. You're safe now. I promise. Clara turned her head slowly to face me. She could have hurt the baby. I know. She did it on purpose. Not because of the flowers. Because I didn't back down. I know, I repeated, because that was all I had. What none of us knew yet was just how fast everything was about to move. While Clara rested, Marcus and I sat in stiff plastic chairs outside her room, drinking hospital coffee and watching texts pour in. First came the video. Then came the shares. Then came the wildfire. By 10 p.m., the footage of Helen yanking Clara's hair was all over the local neighborhood Facebook groups. By midnight, it was on the Edenbrook Community Watch page. The next morning, it was on the homepage of the Edenbrook Herald, and by lunchtime, a reporter from Channel 7 parked outside our house looking for a statement. We said nothing. Clara was still in the hospital. That was all that mattered. But the HOA? Oh, they weren't silent. While Clara and I were eating dry turkey sandwiches from the cafeteria tray, Marcus got a call from our neighbor David, the one with the koi pond and the 6-foot wind chime. You're not gonna believe this, he said. Emergency HOA meeting. No Zoom. In person. 4 p.m. Full board attendance. They kicked Helen off. Wait, what? Marcus said. She's out. Removed as president. Unanimous vote. Turns out Helen wasn't just disliked. She was feared. And that fear only worked when no one challenged it. Once the video hit, people came out of the woodwork. She yelled at one family for flying a Puerto Rican flag. She wrote up an elderly couple for having a ceramic gnome that didn't match the community vibe. She threatened to fine a disabled veteran for a ramp that was too industrial. All of it came out. Loudly. Publicly. At the emergency meeting, folks read statements. They showed more footage. They quoted emails she'd sent with phrases like aesthetic decay and ethnic clutter. The board, half of whom had quietly hated her for years, had their hands forced. By 5 p.m., a formal apology had been emailed to our family. By 6, a printed one was taped to our door. And by sunset, something strange started happening. People started planting. Blue indigo. Lavender. Goldenrod. Sage. Even the Millers, who never broke a single rule, dug a little hole right by their mailbox and put in a fat, blooming peony with a note. For Clara. Helen, who'd posted bail and returned home the same day, looked out her window and saw her own yard surrounded by color. No one vandalized. No one trespassed. But it was loud in its own way. Marcus stood in our driveway watching it all. Poetic, he said. Not as satisfying as a court date. But poetic. Clara came home the next morning, sore but safe. The restraining order came that afternoon. Helen wasn't allowed within 500 feet of our home. That alone changed everything. I finally exhaled. The court date was 2 weeks later. Helen wore her signature white blazer, hair helmeted in place, glasses perched perfectly on her nose. She looked like she was heading to a brunch, not an arraignment. Her lawyer tried the usual. Emotional stress, lapse in judgment, a passionate commitment to community standards. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, wasn't buying it. You're not a cop, Miss Delacroix, she said. You're a volunteer with a clipboard. You don't get to put your hands on people because you're upset about flowers. The video was played. The courtroom was quiet. Clara sat beside me, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping mine. Helen was offered a deal: community service, mandatory anger management classes, a permanent restraining order, and full removal from all HOA duties, current and future. She took it. She didn't apologize. But the neighborhood? They did. People brought casseroles. Handmade cards. Someone crocheted a blanket with indigo flowers. I didn't even know most of these people, Clara whispered. You do now, I said. That night, Marcus sat on our porch drinking sweet tea and watching the lights across the street. She lost the game because she thought no one would call her bluff, he said. People like that always do. The courtroom might have closed the chapter legally, but the real finale came a week later, during Sycamore Glen's first ever cultural garden day. It started small. Just a few neighbors, mostly moms, put out signs by their flower beds. These peonies came from my great-grandmother's farm in Mississippi. My dad brought these seeds from Seoul. This indigo is for Clara. But then came the olive tree in front of the Petrovich house. The row of sunflowers by the Nguyen's driveway. Even the Hendersons, known for their obsessive Christmas light displays, swapped their box hedges for bright marigolds with a sign, in memory of my abuela. Helen watched from behind her window, blinds half drawn, her once pristine lawn looking like a sterile golf course in a sea of color. She wasn't invited. No one said it. They didn't need to. What finally broke her wasn't the court hearing. Wasn't the restraining order. It was the moment she realized her rules meant nothing anymore. She was no longer feared, just forgotten. 2 days later, a moving truck showed up. Quiet. Efficient. Like she'd never been there. Marcus stood with me on the sidewalk, arms crossed. Does it make me a bad person that this makes me feel good? I asked. No, he said. It makes you human. And just like that, Sycamore Glen exhaled. In the following weeks, everything shifted. The HOA issued new guidelines, shorter, clearer, and with a clause Clara helped write. Cultural heritage landscaping shall be respected and encouraged, provided it is safely maintained. Marcus extended his stay, running weekend self-defense classes at the community center. All free. All full. The class was mostly women, some older, some younger, each with stories, none as violent as Clara's but all full of quiet fear. It's not about fighting, he told them. It's about knowing where the line is, and what you'll do when someone crosses it. Then, on a breezy October morning, Clara went into labor. 12 hours, one epidural, and a whole lot of swearing later, our daughter was born. Healthy. Big. Loud. We named her June Violet Nolan. Violet for the flower that started it all. And June because somehow, even after everything, this neighborhood had bloomed again. Clara held her in the hospital bed, teary-eyed, whispering, "You're going to grow up in a world where people stand up for each other. I promise." And I believed her. The morning we brought June home, the neighborhood had left something on our porch. A potted blue indigo, blooming like fire in a clay pot wrapped in ribbons. A note was tucked inside. "From roots to blossoms, thank you for helping us grow." If you've made it this far, you know this story wasn't just about flowers or fines or HOA rules. It was about courage, dignity, and what happens when ordinary people decide they've had enough. So if you've ever been pushed around by a neighborhood bully in a pantsuit and pearls, hit that like button. If you believe standing up matters, hit subscribe. And if you're watching from somewhere that's dealt with an HOA Karen of your own, tell us where you're from in the comments. We read every one. Here's to peaceful yards, loud neighbors with good hearts, and never letting fear take root where community should grow. Take care of each other. And we'll see you in the next story.